Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a delicious little jeu d'esprit sent to me by my occasional acquaintance and correspondent, Mr. Brian Reinhart. Mr. Reinhart came across a fabulous little pamphlet published by René Leibowitz, the French pedagogue, conductor, composer, and guy who did that really fast Beethoven cycle with the Royal Philharmonic that purported to use Beethoven's metronome markings. Remember that? That was René Leibowitz. He was a devoted Schoenbergian serialist. Big time. He taught a whole generation of composers we all despise and got them to compose in that style. One of his pupils was the Swedish composer Alan Pettersson, who, because he was not writing in a dodecaphonic style, he had his own equally terrifying path to pursue, wrote his first symphony, he claimed, behind Leibowitz's back, because he was that much of a rabid serialist and modernist. So, what are we talking about? Well, in 1955, apparently Leibowitz published a little pamphlet called Sibelius, the worst composer in the world. That is, Sibelius, le plus mauvais compositeur du monde. Oh, yes, because Sibelius was the enemy of all that was serial. And so I am going to read this to you because Mr. Reinhardt suggested that this might be an appropriate piece to become a little music chat, and I couldn't agree more. So thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. This one is for you, buddy. Here we go. This pertinent note is published on the occasion of the 90th birthday of the Finnish composer and is printed on 40 copies of white vellum and 11 copies of Holland antique paper, numbered 1 through 51, by the editor. The printing was executed on 8 December 1955 by the National Invalide Press of Liège. You ready? Here we go, guys. The music lover or musician educated in France does not know very much about Sibelius. Even frequenting certain foreign musical centers, Germany, Austria, Belgium, Holland, Italy, will not shed significant light on this musician. It may be that you know his name, that he is Finnish, and even that he is the author of the Valse Triste, and he may thus be understood as an inoffensive composer of salon music. But if you look upon the musical scenes in England or America, you realize that the name of Sibelius, rarely spoken in our country, appears in those countries scarcely less often than the famous brands of cars, cigarettes, or toothpaste. The critics praise him in dithyrambs. Toscanini claims that he is, quote, the greatest symphonist after Beethoven, unquote. And there is even a Sibelius Society, which has adopted the goal of recording and promoting his works. Astonishment and curiosity seize you, and you must ask if this is, passing by unnoticed, one of the most central events of the music of our time. To consult a score, I consulted the man's most important works, for example, the Fifth Symphony. Astonishment grew, curiosity shrank. The score offers a picture of poverty and misery beyond belief, but the admirers of Sibelius reassure us, listen and you will see. Alas, the ear does not deny what sight had perceived. The symphony presents a little like this: some vague sonic shapes without consistency, banalities and vulgarities assuming the role of themes. Their appeal is awkward and ill-formed, their harmonies incorrect, poor, and schematic. Suddenly, the flow is interrupted without the author giving thought to the various consequences of which, despite everything, those vague themes could have been capable. Then the themes reappear without rhyme or reason, without connection to what precedes and what follows, ground down to bits, twisted apart, even clumsier and more painful than they had been on first appearance. the rhythmic monotony, the absence of any real counterpoint, the uniformity of tempo, in short, the ennui which arises from all this quickly makes you sleepy. Then rudely you are awakened because the piece is finished without your being able to say how or why anything in it happened. This description was only of the first movement, but the others are such that the reader need only read the above to have an idea of them. Oh boy, yeah, right. It is then that the anxiety grabs you and you express your doubts over the admirers. Naturally, it is you who does not understand the harmony which you feel is wrong, but that is exactly the thing which makes Sibelius so original, the absence of development. But that is precisely his power. This is what places him above schools. The rhythmic and melodic laziness, but these are the qualities of Sibelius who, like Beethoven, managed to make the most of the simplest elements, etc. This, however, is not playing fair. It is difficult to believe in the symphonic work of those who appear incapable of creating a new style. We are not very convinced by the hovering above schools when someone at the school had to be a dunce, and one suspects duncehood is the case due to the originality of the ignorance, the incompetence, and the impotence. I was waiting for impotence. You got to have impotence. But then, why such tremendous success? Perhaps Sibelius himself is most surprised. You might, of course, explain it with the conservatism of the musical public, who see in Sibelius the possibility of making new music in old styles. What solace, what restoration of a peaceful conscience if you could prove the validity of such a venture. Quote, "You see, I told you so. All those dissonances, you can still make good music without them," unquote. But the sole merit of Sibelius is that we can abandon all thought of such a philosophy because he showed us in such a magisterial way that the old styles, once so authentic, have now become false. And he also showed us that by using the old styles, nothing is easier than to become the worst composer in the world. Thank you, Brian. That's a terrific translation. It really is. Anyway, so that's our dear friend, René Leibowitz. And I got to tell you, what a messed up guy he must have been. Now, Leibowitz, as I said, was a very famous pedagogue, taught all kinds of people to compose in strict serial style, and he even felt somewhat abandoned because he was a Schoenbergian, but then under Boulez, who had been his pupil, they all became Weberians. And I think the idea of these serial people shrieking and killing each other over whether they should be disciples of Schoenberg or Webern is just delicious. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for some of those scintillating discussions. But, the funniest thing about Leibowitz is, he was a composer, and he wrote more than 100 works. Perhaps the most famous of them is a piece called Marijuana, Variation non sérieuse. Yes, I would love to hear Marijuana. I'll bet that's a dodecaphonic romp. It's supposed to be quite jolly. And the other thing that's funny about him is that as a conductor, and his conducting was famous for that Beethoven cycle, as I said, but also for doing disc after disc of little musical bonbons. Like, for example, here's the Scribendum box of the art of Leibowitz, and what an art it was. On one disc, disc 7, we find, are you ready for this? Let's see, Solveig Song from Peer Gynt by Grieg, Meyerbeer's Coronation March from Le Prophète. Oh my God, the Sullivan's Overture to the HMS Pinafore, Waldteufel's Les Patineurs, Rimsky-Korsakov's The Flight of the Bumblebee, Manuel de Falla's Ritual Fire Dance from El Amor Brujo, the Gounod Bach Ave Maria, Jakob Gada's Jalousie, Tango Tzigana, Yum, ba-da, da-da-da-da-da-dum, ba-da, oh yes. And then we get, let's see, Chabrier's Joyeuse March, Boccherini's Minuet, Delibes' Intermezzo from La Source. And let's see, what's this thing here? Oh, Diniku, that horror staccato, which I don't know why anybody plays that. And then we have, let's see, how are we wrapping this up? Oh, with Iber's Escale. So, That's what Leibowitz was doing when he wasn't crapping on Sibelius, teaching pupils to write dodecaphonic music, and composing marijuana, variation non sérieuse. Quite a career. And to think, he issued this on the occasion of Sibelius's 90th birthday. Has there ever been a more bitter and bitchy, just absolutely pointlessly nasty, small-minded bit of musical meanness ever published? I am so grateful to Brian Reinhart for sharing it with me and suggesting that I share it with you. So keep on listening, folks. Oh my goodness, there's so much to chat about, isn't there? Take care.